The plains didn't forgive mistakes. They stretched wide and empty beneath a sun that burned without mercy, swallowing sound, hope, and men who thought themselves tougher than the land. Dust rolled like smoke beneath the hooves of a lone horse cutting across the frontier. Each step measured, each breath labored. This was cattle country, dry grass, broken fences, and silence thick enough to choke on. Ethan Cole rode with his shoulders set low, hat pulled down against the glare. He'd been a cowboy most of his life, and before that a boy who learned early that mercy was expensive and hesitation could get you killed. The reins rested loose in his hand, not from carelessness but from trust. Trust earned through years of blood, sweat, and long rides that ended with fewer men than started them. He was heading back to the Circle R ranch, driving the last of a small herd he'd picked up near the southern flats. The ranch needed every head it could get. Drought had thinned the land. Rustlers had thinned the rest. And men like Ethan were what stood between survival and collapse. The wind shifted. Ethan's horse flicked an ear, then slowed. That's when he heard it. Not the wind, not the creak of leather or the groan of saddle straps. A sound that didn't belong out here. Small, thin. A cry. Ethan reined in hard. The horse snorted uneasy. The plains fell silent again, as if daring him to doubt himself. He waited, heart thudding louder than he liked to admit. Then it came again. "Mama!" The word barely carried, fragile as a breath, but it cut through him like a blade. Ethan swung down from the saddle, boots hitting dirt, his hand already drifting toward the colt at his hip. Out here nothing cried unless it was dying, or bait. He followed the sound toward a shallow ravine where scrub brush clung stubbornly to cracked earth. The smell hit him first, old burlap, sweat, something sour. Then he saw it. A sack, tied at the mouth with frayed rope, moving. Ethan knelt slowly, every instinct screaming danger. He'd seen traps before. Men used desperation the way others used bullets. But when the sack twitched again, and that weak sound slipped out once more, instinct lost to something older, something human. He cut the rope. Inside was a baby, a girl no more than a year old, her face red with crying, dust streaked across her cheeks, lips cracked from thirst. She reached out blindly, fingers curling around. His shirt, like she already knew, he was all that stood between her and the end of the world. Ethan sucked in a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Someone had left her here to die. He wrapped her in his coat, heart pounding. The sun had been ruthless, the night colder than mercy. She shouldn't have been alive. And yet here she was, staring up at him with glassy eyes, whispering a word she didn't understand but needed all the same. "Mama!" Ethan swallowed hard. He didn't have a plan. Cowboys rarely did when fate came knocking. But he knew one thing. Whoever did this didn't want her found. And people who abandoned babies in sacks weren't the kind you crossed lightly. Back at the ranch, trouble was already waiting. The Circle R sat low against the horizon. Weathered wood and tired fences, warning the world it had seen better days. Clara Monroe stood near the corral, rifle resting against her shoulder, eyes sharp despite the dust and heat. She ran the ranch now, after her father's death. And she did it with grit that earned respect and enemies. When she saw Ethan riding in with a bundle held tight against his chest, her jaw set. "What did you bring back this time, Cole?" she called. Ethan dismounted and pulled the coat back just enough for her to see. Clara froze. "Oh my God!" The baby whimpered, and Clara was already moving, hands gentle, voice low. "She's burning up." "Ethan, where did you find her?" "South Flats," he said. "Left like trash." Clara's expression hardened into something dangerous. "That land's claimed." "By men who don't care who they hurt," Ethan replied. They both knew the name without saying it. Silas Boone, the most feared cattle baron in 3 counties. A man who bought land with blood when gold didn't work. Rumor said he'd been paying women off, cleaning up problems quietly. This didn't feel quiet. This felt careless or desperate. That night, as the baby slept fitfully in a crate padded with blankets, Ethan stood outside the ranch house, staring into the dark. Clara joined him, close enough that he could smell the soap on her hands, the exhaustion in her breath. "If Boone finds out you took her, she said softly. He won't stop. Ethan didn't look at her. Then neither will I. For the first time in years, the plains felt smaller, like the land itself was holding its breath. Somewhere out there, men were already riding. And this baby, this impossible, fragile life, had just pulled him into a fight he couldn't walk away from. Not anymore. The plains remembered everything. Every hoofprint pressed into the dirt. Every drop of blood spilled where no one bothered to bury the dead. By dawn, the wind had already begun erasing signs of Ethan Cole's ride. But some tracks cut too deep to disappear so easily. Men were following them now, men who didn't believe in mercy, and never left loose ends untied. At the Circle R Ranch, the morning broke pale and tense. Clara Monroe hadn't slept. Neither had Ethan. The baby, whom Clara had quietly started calling Lily, because she refused to think of her as the baby in the sack, had cried through most of the night. Hunger, fear, memories. She was too young to name, but old enough to feel. Clara rocked her near the window, eyes scanning the horizon between each gentle sway. "You ever think about how easy it'd be," Clara said quietly, "to put her back?" Ethan stiffened. "I didn't say I would," she added quickly. "Just thinking about how this land works. Boone's land explains its own rules." Ethan leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "And what kind of people do we become if we follow them?" Clara met his gaze. Something unspoken passed between them. Fear tangled with something warmer, more dangerous. Hope. Before she could answer, the sound reached them. Hooves. Not the lazy rhythm of ranch work. Not cattle. This was tight, controlled, men riding with purpose. Ethan moved instantly, grabbing his rifle. Clara handed Lily to old Mrs. Harper, who'd been with the ranch longer than either of them had been alive. "Sell her," Clara said. "If shooting starts, don't wait for us." Mrs. Harper nodded once, face grim. She disappeared down the steps, clutching the child to her chest. Dust rose on the horizon. 6 riders crested the hill like a bad omen. Black hats, long coats despite the heat. Boone's men. Ethan recognized 2 of them, Jonah, Pike, and the twin brothers known only as Red and Redder. Men who smiled when others begged. They reined in slow, deliberate. Jonah Pike tipped his hat. "Morning, Miss Monroe. Mr. Cole." Clara didn't move. "Private land." Jonah smiled wider. "Just passing through. Heard tell you picked something up out south." Ethan stepped forward. "You hear wrong." Jonah's eyes flicked over him, calculating. "Funny thing about rumors," he said. "They usually start because somebody did something they weren't supposed to." One warning shot cracked the air from the ridge behind them. Jonah's smile vanished. The fight exploded like thunder. Bullets tore into fence posts, wood splintering. Ethan fired from behind the trough, dropping one man clean from his saddle. Clara shot from the porch, steady and cold, winging another rider who screamed as he fell. But Boone's men didn't retreat. They never did. Redder charged the barn, trying to flush them out. Ethan broke cover, tackled him hard into the dirt. They rolled, fists flying, dust choking the air. Redder pulled a knife. Ethan smashed his wrist with the rifle butt, then drove the stock into his face until he stopped moving. The twins fled. Jonah Pike stayed long enough to shout, "You just declared yourself dead men." Then they were gone. The silence afterward was worse than the gunfire. Smoke drifted. A horse screamed somewhere behind the barn. Ethan's hands shook as the adrenaline bled out of him. Clara stood frozen on the porch, rifle still raised, chest heaving. "They'll come back," she said. "Yes," Ethan replied. "With more." That night, the ranch gathered in the lamplight. Mrs. Harper held Lily while the others argued. Leave her at a church. Ride north. Hand her over quietly, and pray Boone kept his word. Ethan listened, jaw clenched. Finally, Clara spoke. Boone didn't want her dead because she was a burden. He wanted her dead because she mattered. The room went still. Ethan looked at her. "You saying she's his?" Clara nodded. "Or someone he owns. Either way, that sack wasn't mercy. It was erasure." Ethan stared at Lily's sleeping face. Her tiny hand curled reflexively, trusting the world that had already tried to kill her. "I'll take her east," he said. "Past Boone's reach. There's a priest I know near the river. He owes me." Clara swallowed. "You won't make it alone?" "I won't try," Ethan replied. They packed before dawn. As Ethan saddled his horse, Clara stepped closer, the space between them suddenly too small. "You bring her back," Clara said, "or you don't come back at all." Ethan hesitated. Then gently, he touched Clara's hand, brief, careful, like something too fragile to name. Behind them, unseen in the dark, another rider watched the ranch through a spyglass. Silas Boone himself, and he was smiling.